All right. Welcome everybody to our webinar for today. Appreciate you all being here. We already have a huge crowd, which is awesome. This is our highest registered event that we've had for a webinar. So looking forward to the conversation today. Um, Ben, once you get a chance to share the slides. Perfect. There we go. So my name is David Donaldson. As you can tell, my colleague Ben Gagnon Maynard with him, which I'll give him a shout out a little later in this deck. Going to be talking today about going over the keynote that I did at our national convening last month in the direction that we're pushing as National Center for Grow Your Own. And so we're covering today the state of registered apprenticeships and teaching from growth to quality. And so just a little bit of a quick reminder about what we're all about at National Center for Grow Your Own. We are to create a world where you can become a teacher for free and get paid to do so. And I used to remember when I would say that 3 years ago when we first started, people would laugh. And now people aren't laughing. If anything, they're not in their heads in agreement as states all across the country. Many of you on this call are contributing and leading that work in your respective states, districts, and ed prep providers to remove those financial barriers and to change the game so that one day all kids have not only the teacher they need, but deserve. I'm incredibly blessed that we have an awesome team at the National Center for Grow Your Own. So Ben, we've already given him a shout out, Ben Gagnon Maynard and Miles Woodhall, who both worked with me at the Tennessee Department of Education, where we created the first teacher apprenticeship in the nation. Shout out to our friends in Clarksville, Montgomery, and Austin Peay State University. Dr. Carla Warren, who joined us over a year ago from the West Virginia Department of Ed, where she created the first youth registered apprenticeship for K-12 teaching in the nation. Mary Wirtz, who joined us in the fall from Council of State Governments, and is just doing incredible work. And then Ashley Osborne, who joined us after creating two K-12 teacher registered apprenticeship programs, one in Ector County ISD and the other in Midland ISD, both part of the Permian Basin region, or some may know it better as Friday Night Lights. And so as I was thinking about something we all have in common, what brings us all together? Food. Interesting way to start this, but one of the privileges I have in the role of creating this entity and by having our state network and our district network is I get to travel all across the country. And so our team a year ago this month was in Alaska, in Anchorage, and we had our first yak burger. We work with the school district of Philadelphia, and so cheesesteaks are part of our many meals. And I'm not going to get into Pat's or Geno's. We don't take a stance on that because we know better. I've never had a runza before, but Ben and I were in Lincoln, Nebraska. We made it to our first Nebraska Cornhuskers game, and it's quite an interesting meal recommended to us by many folks. We do a lot of work in Texas, and Ashley on our team has launched the Texas Center for Grow Your Own. And so Franklin Barbecue, if you haven't had that, it's the best. And then our friends in Hawaii are always known for their macadamia nut chocolates that they bring with every event that we get to see them at. And speaking of food, and speaking of apprenticeships, I thought this was interesting. Whole Foods a while back put out that they were reviving culinary apprenticeships. So they literally have a pizza making apprenticeship. And as you can see, one's for butchers and bakers, a fishmonger, and also a certified cheese professional. That one I thought was interesting. It says after 4,000 hours or 2 years, you have the ability to apply to be a candidate for the certified cheese professional program, which then takes an additional half year of training even after that. But as we move on outside of food and focusing on apprenticeships, what really unites us? Because we're all here to talk about educator apprenticeships. Well, the folks that attend our convening and are in our monthly networks and all the clients we work with across the country and folks here on this call, we're student-centered. We want all students to have not only the teacher they need, but the teacher they deserve. We're also willing to innovate. All the folks on here, we know something isn't working. Otherwise, we wouldn't be trying to do something different. We know we got to find a way to remove those barriers, to increase the quality of training, and to ensure that these teacher shortages go away. And at the same time, we don't admire problems. We're not afraid of failure. We're willing to roll up our sleeves and do something about it. That's very rare, unfortunately, for government. And yet, I want to applaud folks that are working to confront these issues each and every day. And so, as of last month, from the US Department of Labor, the growth of teacher apprenticeships has been nothing but amazing in the sense that it is the fastest growing occupation in the history of registered apprenticeships. And so 46 states, three territories, including of Washington, D.C., 448 folks have already completed the program, and there's just over 3,900. Now, I can tell you, we already have data from February, but we didn't want to include that in here just yet because those numbers have already been updated since then. For example, just the other week, our friends at Arizona became the 47th state. And so it's always great to have these slides when they almost become outdated within like a week's time. And so the growth has been just off the charts. And in our own work, we have had our state network that we've been running since August of 2022. This network started with 7 states where we meet monthly, and it was a chance because people were willing to try to do things differently, but they were the only person in their respective states trying to do this work. And so we've created this community that has grown and grown and grown. I'm proud to say that as of, I think it was literally 2 days ago, we now have our 46th member. Pennsylvania is our newest member to join this network. We have 44 states, Washington, D.C., and Department of Defense education activity, all participating in our monthly state network. And so it's exciting about all this growth, but if that's all we're focused on, we're going to completely miss the ball. And we have to pivot to the focus of quality. What I mean here is that we're not talking about growing just for growth's sake. That's not what this is about. We've been proponents of pushing it. We've been, so excited. This state's joined, this state's joined. Really exciting to see that. But if we don't take a step back and say, wait a second, we need to make some adjustments here, this work will all be for naught. And so we've proven with the growth that it's not a fluke. When, like I said, when we first started and came out of Tennessee, people were like, what's a teacher apprenticeship? Never heard of it. I don't know what that is. Or some people would say, we've been doing teacher apprenticeships for 20 years. Well, I don't know if that's possible because it was only approved, at that time, a couple months ago. And so if we all here collectively can agree that something's broken, something's not working, why we have the teacher shortages, why we have folks who want to be a teacher but not the opportunity or pathway to do it, then my push is, why are we designing programs in the same way and just slapping the apprenticeship label on it? Apprenticeship, unfortunately, in many places has become a buzz term when it comes to the teacher pathway space. And so what is the point of having an apprenticeship if you're still charging tuition for a candidate? We have seen programs still charging $35,000, $45,000 for somebody to get their degree. But hey, it's called an apprenticeship. And so they're taking the labor money and just using it to maybe offer a slight discount or to pocket the cost to pay for staff salaries. And at the same time, we've also seen apprenticeship programs where on day one, you're serving as teacher of record or you're working as a full-time sub. And I'm sorry, an apprentice is somebody learning to do the job, not doing the job. A full-time sub, that's actually how I started my career. I was a substitute teacher. You are a de facto teacher of record. You are in that classroom by yourself. That is not fair to the students. We all know that. It's not fair to the apprentice. So if we know better, we got to do better. And if we know something's broken, then we have to do something different. So what I want to convey here is, yeah, there might be 3,900 plus apprentices enrolled in programs throughout this country, but not all apprenticeships are created equal, not by a long shot. And frankly, what does it say about the values of our country when it actually takes more time to become a certified cheese professional apprentice at Whole Foods than it does for many programs of teacher apprenticeships throughout the country where you can become a teacher walk in off the street and start tomorrow morning as a teacher. But hey, it's called an apprenticeship. We have to do something about that. We have to fix the bar on quality moving forward. And so what I'm proud to share is that we worked with our state network to say, okay, there's got to be a better way. Recognizing anytime you have 46 different states or 44 states, DC and Department of Defense, you're not all going to agree on things. And so this is probably, I think, the 13th version of what we're calling the Quality Teacher Registered Apprenticeship Agreement. And I want to be clear here. We're going to go over each one. It's okay if you're doing 1 out of 5 or 2 out of 5. I am the biggest proponent of continuous improvement. The goal is, okay, we're doing 2 out of 5 today. How do we do 3 out of 5 6 months from now? How do we do 4 out of 5 a year from now? How can we move and continuously focus on not just growth, but on the quality of our programs moving forward? And so with the first core principle we have is that in the work we've done all across the country, by far, when a state agency is the sponsor of the program, it is best positioned to ensure quality control in this space. And so the rationale being that we've seen it uphold that quality, they've been able to build the robust data collection processes and ensure the economies of scale are leveraged to lower costs of tuition. When we first started in Tennessee, we had $2 million and we were able to get over 230 apprentices in. We were able to negotiate with universities, leverage economies of scale to drive down the cost to under $10,000 per person. We then grew that to 670 apprentices for 6.5 million. And so that is key in this space. If I was to give $10,000 to an individual and they walk down the street to their local university, that university would probably say, hey, I think you're missing a zero. And so we realized, but wait a second, when I go to a president or provost of a university and I say, hey, would you rather have the current 100% tuition you have for 10 students or 50% tuition for 40 students? They get it every time. They're going to take that deal. It makes sense to them because enrollment is down nationally all across the country over the last decade across the country in ed preps. So they need districts and states just as much as we need them. And it's not just about lowering the costs. It's also about that quality control. States can mandate and request, hey, I want to see how you're training people in the science of reading. I want to see how you're training people in high quality instructional materials. Whatever the values and priorities of that respective state, we have seen those states have the largest, the quickest to scale, the ability to add the most amount of districts while also having that focus on quality and driving down costs. The next principle is that an aspiring educator should not accumulate any tuition debt while participating in that program. We just talked about how we were able to drive down costs to $10,000, just under 10,000, and we've replicated that in over 12 states so far. And states have been able to do that without even working with us. It's amazing what happens when you realize, the golden rule, the evil version of the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules. And so this work, I've always talked about how it's deeply personal for me. It is a complete myth when people say nobody wants to be a teacher anymore, because we have examples of wait lists all across the country. And yet why I say it's personal is because I am the son of a school cafeteria worker, and I'm also the son of a West Point alum. My mom was my school cafeteria worker. She could not afford to pay for college. And yet she taught Sunday school and vacation Bible school for over 2 decades. And so if we believe as a country that teaching and the military are both forms of public service, where is the equivalent of a GI Bill for those who want to be a teacher? And so, yes, there are things like public service loan forgiveness, but you shouldn't have to take out loans to begin with. And frankly, if you look at the last 4 to 5 years of public service loan forgiveness, the average person was getting forgiven over $67,000. And that doesn't even include the 10 years of payments that they were doing up until that point. And so if we're able to drive down costs to under 10,000, think about how many more folks could participate and get involved if we actually just did things differently and we took different approaches to this work. and we leverage those economies of scale. We did it at a state level. Imagine if they did it at the federal level. Core principle number 3, an apprentice should not serve as a teacher of record, a full-time substitute, or any non-classroom role. We've heard about a program that was brought to our attention where a school secretary is a teacher apprentice. I'm sorry, how are you apprenticing to be a teacher when you're working inside the school office all day? That's not an apprenticeship. That is somebody going back to school to get their degree, and we wish them the best, more power to them. But that's not a registered apprenticeship. An apprentice is a learner preparing to do the job, not yet performing the full responsibilities of a teacher. We need to set up positional guardrails to ensure that the apprentice has an uninterrupted and complete preparation experience. Look, folks, we know what happens when someone is a teacher of record on day one. Students suffer academically, and also the turnover rate for that individual is going to be so much higher. For those who don't know, because I mentioned, we come from Tennessee, we're served as the chief of human capital, but previously I led talent for Detroit Public Schools, where I had been a principal in the district as well. We know these things about folks. And so why aren't we using registered apprenticeship to raise the bar moving forward? If we do not raise the bar moving forward, any evaluations are going to come out that show where apprenticeship could be thrown out like baby with the bathwater if we're not distinguishing between emergency cert programs or other entities or other pathways that allow somebody to be a full-time sub. That's not the way an apprenticeship should be. You should be under a teacher of record who is the mentor teacher for a minimum of 1 school year. That's going to lead to longer term effectiveness as well as retention and longevity. Core principle number 4, speaking of that 1 year, of gradual release model under the mentor teacher. To be clear again, the mentor teacher should be the person serving as the teacher of record, not the apprentice. We believe in that minimum of a full year of student teaching ensures that the apprentice receives structured mentorship and practices hands-on learning under the guidance of a skilled educator. Related technical instruction, or the coursework from the Ed Prep, offered to apprentices should be relevant, rigorous, and connected to the on-the-job experiences. It shouldn't be done in a silo, but it should be embedded with what they're doing day to day on the job. And finally, the sponsor should promote opportunities for educator apprentices to graduate with a dual endorsement in special education and another certification area based on district and state priorities. The rationale here is whether you teach special ed or not, being certified in it leads to longer retention. There was really good research by Dr. Allison Gilmore when she was with Temple University that spoke about that. But more importantly, folks, imagine a world where every teacher is a special education teacher. Think about the impact that would have, not just on teacher retention, but more importantly, engagement of students. And so looking at these 5 principles, one more time, again, I just want to reiterate, your program or the program you're designing might be, oh, we do two of these 5, or we do 4 of these 5. Great. How do we get to all 5? How can we keep moving forward? And I want to also stress that if you're in a state where the state is not playing the role of sponsor and you're a district leading this work, more power to you. Keep knocking it out of the park until you become that example that the state bases its model after. Innovation happens at the local level. I strongly believe that. And states should always be constantly searching for what is happening in districts and their respective contexts to identify what can be used and what can be helped, supported to expand across the rest of the state. And so in our work to date thus far, this is actually our 3-year anniversary this month since going full time in this work. In less than 3 years, technically, we've already had 15 SEA clients, which we've just been so blessed to get to do this work with so many folks, let alone, the states we're talking to now about setting up stuff and things like that. But we've just had such an awesome opportunity to work in, rural states, large urban states, suburban areas, red, blue, you name it, folks that all agree on one thing. We got to find a way to ensure every child has not only the teacher they need, but deserve. And outside of our state education agency clients, we've worked with districts, nonprofits, universities, as you can see. Just such an awesome opportunity over these last 3 years to date. And we look forward to continuing that work more broadly. And so some other pet projects we've got to work on is for 5 states, we've actually been able to bring in over $28 million in funding from the US Department of Labor. And so those states being Alaska, Nebraska, Hawaii, North Dakota, and Virginia are just doing some incredibly innovative work in the teacher apprenticeship space. And then it's also expanding into the principal registered apprenticeship. And we're talking pre-apprenticeships and youth apprenticeships. Really, really exciting work. Speaking of the principal apprenticeship, Ben and Miles on our team with North Dakota Department of Public Instruction drafted the K-12 Principal Registered Apprenticeship Playbook, a free resource that's available on our website. And if you also go on the webinars part of our site, you'll see multiple webinars on the Principal Registered Apprenticeship. In the fall, we launched the Texas Center for Grow Your Own. So Ashley Osborne on our team is leading that work. Texas is a big state, and we've done a lot of work in Texas. And Ashley came from the district that created the first district-led principal registered apprenticeship. And so we're really excited taking, in addition to the states, the safe states we work with, also developing this in-state grow your own center as well to take a more local approach. And then I'd be remiss if I said I'd be giving Ben a highlight later, but probably our biggest email blast to date with, in LinkedIn posts and Twitter posts was when Ben appeared on Jeopardy. And so that was easily our most liked one and something we're continue to be proud of Ben having been able to do. And so as we look forward to 2025, we are going to keep pushing this quality teacher registered apprenticeship agreement and working with our states to move closer and closer to implementing 5 of the 5 core principles in there. We've also been doing a lot of work on federal government engagement. Even since January, things have changed in that now 4 of the Department of Ed's deputy secretary and 3 assistant secretaries are, it's either my former boss or the other 3 are all clients of ours. And then even on the Department of Labor, the assistant secretary is a former client of ours. And so we really appreciate being able to work with folks who get it, who understand the benefit of apprenticeships in general, let alone for teacher registered apprenticeships, but more importantly, are folks that have actually implemented that in their respective states that we've been able to work with to date. We mentioned our state clients and other partners to date, and so we're excited to continue to work with folks as well as grow the new clients that we'll be announcing. We just signed a contract with North Carolina 2 days ago, and we have something in the works with 2 to 3 other states that we're excited to share shortly. In a couple weeks, we'll be announcing our first acquisition of another company that's going to create a new opportunity for us to offer more support and professional development to our district and state partners. As of right now, we also have a new occupation. So, I authored the teacher apprenticeship when I was in Tennessee. Then in July of 2023, we worked with Superintendent Kirsten Baszler and Assistant Superintendent Lori Matsky in North Dakota to do the principal registered apprenticeship. Well, now we have a lead teacher occupation that is undergoing review right now at the US Department of Labor. Really excited for that. We partnered with North Dakota again on this, as well as our friends at Arizona State University and their Next Educator Workforce Initiative. So Brent Madden and Lennon over there, great folks, great friends of ours doing awesome work. I mentioned earlier, we have our state network. We also have our district network, the state one now just adding Pennsylvania. We have our next meeting actually tomorrow, where we'll have the Nebraska Department of Ed presenting on their work. And at our district network, I'm excited to have a well-known researcher presenting on teacher shortages and lessons learned in that space. And then the other thing that we've been getting into, because of the amount of states in our network, because they reach out to us all the time asking, hey, this group's contacting me. What do I do? We're getting into the space of identifying and promoting quality providers for our partners. And so we recently made an official endorsement to support on the next slide. Craft Education System is our exclusive apprenticeship data management provider. This allows any state, district, or university that is a sponsor of a registered apprenticeship program to have a system that they can use to track the data. And what we're also really excited to share is that the folks that Craft has been incredibly generous to our network members. And so the service is currently offered for free to our states and to our districts, which is really, really exciting. On a similar note, we actually have an open process right now to identify not only a test preparation provider for licensure assessments, but also for a university provider. As many states have said to us, look, David, I got a high quality provider, but they're also high cost and they're not willing to go down. Or look, I got a provider that has incredibly, efficient on price, but the quality is awful. I'm not going to send anybody to them. And so we're looking to endorse a university, ideally at a national level, but we're also open to a state and regional approach so that states have options, districts have options to use when their local options are not meeting their needs. A couple of our states have had to go out of state with their options before. And so we want to be able to make sure that they have somebody that we vet that we can offer to folks as a potential option, similar to how we're doing Craft with data management. And our next convening, we're excited to announce we're going to continue our partnership with NASDAQ and Jimmy Adams and company, who have been absolutely incredible. January 28th to the 30th, we'll probably be accepting proposals in June or July is my guess for presenters. Really excited. We're also expanding capacity to over 400 seats. We've sold out both years so far in, I think, 2 to 3 months in advance. So we know the demand is there. We had over 150 people just on the wait list. And so we want to expand capacity for next year. So we hope more folks will be able to come. And as I close out, and we'll be doing Q&A after this if anybody has any questions, so please feel free to submit them in the Q&A. Galatians 6:9, it's let us not become weary in doing good. And I hear that phrase all the time with the church I grew up in, the school I was a part of, all the way I was raised. And yet the second part, I feel like I either just neglected or I forgot, or, I always just, would say, let us not become weary in doing good. But comma, why? For at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And so when we were in Tennessee, Ben, Miles, myself, and the team, we were able to create this initiative. It was the Additional Endorsement Initiative. And so we had the Grow Your Own program that turned into the Teacher Apprenticeship. That was for folks who weren't yet teachers to get a bachelor's or master's degree and to become a teacher at no debt. We also had a free program for folks to get a master's in school leadership. But what were we doing for our current teachers? And so one offering we had was this, where over 5,000 educators in Tennessee had the option of adding an additional endorsement in special ed or English as a second language at no additional cost. And what was part of the reason why behind this is, I mentioned earlier, Dr. Allison Gilmore's work that said, whether you teach special ed or not, having the endorsement leads to longer retention. And at the same time, over 20% of vacancies in the state were in one of those two endorsement areas. And so you'll notice in here, this press release came out just as I had left the department to move on to create the National Center for Grow Your Own. And little did I know that in creating this program and this opportunity, that somebody would enter the program that had been teaching for over 25 years in Tennessee. And little did I know that she would go on to enter to get her ESL endorsement and complete the program because the previous ESL teacher in her district was leaving. And she would go on to not only become the state teacher of the year, but as you'll see, she became the national teacher of the year, Missy Tester. And so Missy, if you have not heard her speak, is one of the best public speakers I've ever seen. I want to be clear, not one of the best education speakers, but I'm talking one of the best education speakers. It was like, to me, it was a mix of, for those who know the references, a mix of Garrison Keeler with David Sedaris. I mean, my God, she just had the entire room in the palm of her hand. And what was a little interesting was at our conference, Missy was one of our keynote speakers. I had never met Missy until that day that she came to speak. And so it was incredible to learn that she had gone through a program that we had created years prior and had just done incredible work for her community and be recognized for her expertise and her leadership by being a state teacher of the year and then eventually the national teacher of the year. So as I close out, I just want to remind folks again about Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Thank you for each and every one of you for the work you are doing to launch registered apprenticeship programs. And you might even be like, David, I don't have a program. I just came here to try to see like what is this about? Well, hey, it's amazing what can happen a year from today. So plant those seeds. Warren Buffett, I believe, said, the best day to invest in the stock market was yesterday. Therefore, the second best day is today. Same applies to grow your own programs or teacher apprenticeship programs. And take the lessons learned. Focus on the quality here. Make sure that you're planting those seeds in good soil, you're watering them correctly. And yeah, this work ain't easy. Things will go wrong, but don't become weary in doing good because just maybe you'll have the next Missy Testerman one day. And so with that, I'll turn it over. I think we got some questions. And so please, folks, feel free to put any questions that you may have and we'll do my best to acknowledge them. So, all right, somebody has here about principal registered apprenticeships, saying that in their respective state, you can't enter a principal prep program until you've taught for at least 5 years. Do other states have this restriction that inhibits a potential apprenticeship? So my response there is that folks, every state's going to be different on their licensure requirements when it comes to the principalship. So, for example, New York City, New York State, but when I was in New York City, you had to at least teach for 3 years, for example. When it comes to Michigan, where I'm from, born and raised, you actually could enroll in a program within 6 months. You could be a principal without having taught at all, as long as you enrolled in a school leadership program within 6 months and completed it within 3 years. So the short answer is this: a registered apprenticeship program cannot trump your state department's licensure policies. And so that is something that would be a restriction in your respective state in that case. They would have to teach for 5 years first, if that is the policy in California. My apologies, I'm not up to date on California's policy, but yes, I want to be clear. Registered apprenticeships, same way with the U.S. Department of Labor. They do not trump state laws, state policies, state procedures. Another question we got in here is, how does one become a sponsor for teacher apprenticeships? And can it be cost effective considering record keeping and other expenses? Appreciate the question. As far as how does one become a sponsor? Let me take a step back and just say, almost anybody can become a sponsor. And what I mean by that is it can be a state agency, it can be a district, it can be an ed prep provider, it could be a for-profit, it can be a nonprofit. It's that open-ended. I want to be clear, and you saw it in our core principles, we strongly believe a state agency should be the sponsor. And 9 times out of 10, that's a state education agency, but there are some states where they have a separate body that oversees ed prep and licensure. And in some of those cases, they're the sponsor. So we want to recognize that. And so as far as becoming a sponsor, depending on the state you are in, and you could go on apprenticeship.gov to find out who's your contact person, but you will either go to your USDOL representative or what is known as your state apprenticeship agency representative. About 33 states, I believe, currently are SAA states. And you would come to them, say, hey, I got this district, I got this university, I got folks who want to be a teacher, we want to sponsor the program. As far as cost effectiveness, it is cost effective when a state is a sponsor. It makes no sense to have 34, like in Tennessee, we had 67 districts by the time I left in our Grow Your Own program. Why would I have 67 different sponsors? That's probably the best argument to say why, the purpose of quality control, but also cost effectiveness. And so also, let's be real. If you're a tiny little rural district with only 1,500 to 4,000 kids, you're not going to have the capacity to be a sponsor. And so we're big on consortium approaches, but that's why it's ideal to have the state lead this work. So thank you for that question. For the teacher leadership apprenticeship model, to what degree are the elements of competency based on the teacher leader model standards in which states are providing a licensure endorsement for this area? Oh, it's our friend Jeff. Jeff, hope you're doing well. I hope all is going well in Maryland. To be clear, when it comes to the second part of your question, so what Jeff's question is about is we referenced there's a teacher leader occupation that we've submitted to the USDOL with North Dakota and Arizona State University. We have CCSSO and others who have provided letters of support. We thank them for that. I think AASA provided a letter of support too. To my knowledge, and I could be wrong here, but I think I'm comfortable in saying that at minimum, 90% of states do not have any type of licensure endorsement for a teacher leader. There might be some type of micro-credential, or it could be a official classification at a district level, but I have not yet seen states provide a licensure endorsement. And to be clear, we're not recommending that. I think, I always say legislature is where innovation goes to die. I also think licensure is where innovation goes to die oftentimes. And so we would recommend keeping it out of licensure in this case. As far as the standards that have been submitted or the OTJ competencies, that is based on Arizona State's work. Of course, any other state or district that launches that does pursue a teacher leader occupation, they will be able to, modify those on-the-job competencies to reflect their, values and priorities in this space. But Jeff, I hope you're doing well. There's let me see, sorry, a few questions in here. I'm trying to keep up. Somebody's asking who pays for a program if a state agency is a sponsor. In that case, there's different ways to look at it. Now, we believe that, the best way to scale this work is when a state is putting some money into this and leveraging their economies of scale to drive down the cost in the first place. So I can give you 3 quick examples. Number one, in Tennessee, we started with $2 million. That was 1 million of Title II, 500K of Title III, 500K of IDEA. You might be wondering, how did you use Title III and IDEA? Well, because we required in Tennessee dual endorsement in either special ed or ESL. So now I could use money from those 2 funding sources to help pay for it. Separately, we shared that we've gotten over $28 million for 5 states from the USDOL. So the states are using that money to pay for it. And then in some cases, like our friends in Nebraska, for example, the state legislature, Florida too, we worked on legislation in both Nebraska, Florida, and quite a few other states actually. But they actually put money, a legislature or the governor put money into it to start it. Typically, we're saying let's try to leverage, federal funding to establish proof of concept that then would get legislators to put money behind it. Even in Tennessee, with our 2 million, it eventually led to Governor Lee putting money into it on an annual basis, which was great to see. And that was all pre-ESSER. I think states have to get very creative in a post-ESSER society, to be clear. At the same time, I do think long-term is that districts see the value of it so much and the state leveraged its economies of scale to drive down the costs that districts start putting money into it as well. And it can turn into a long-term more of like a matching opportunity in that space. And if you go on our website in our webinars, Teacher Apprenticeship 101, we talk about the funding available at the district level to get a program off the ground if your state is not yet involved. Got it. I did get corrected, which is always great because when I'm corrected, it means I learned something new. So I want to share it with all of you because it's all about continuous improvement. So I'm going to practice what I preach. I'm being told Illinois does have a teacher leadership endorsement, but at the same time, and I'll leave the person's name out of it just to be just because of what I'm about to say, is that they believe it could use some improvement. And so this is a great opportunity. A registered apprenticeship could cause that conversation to take place to say, hey, why don't we look at maybe revising the standards that go into this license piece while also then ensuring it is coherent. I think that's the right word choice. My apologies, but coherent with what we're going to do with this registered apprenticeship piece, so that it's all in alignment. That's where I'm going with this. Got a question about, can you address the benefits value of creating stackable or laddered apprenticeship pathways utilizing teacher aid, early childhood, CT, K-12, principal, all those in the same program? Um, Love the career ladder thinking. I think Iowa, I believe, is an example that they've done. For example, the equivalent of a freshman or sophomore year of college, so the 0 to 60 credits, they're doing a teacher aide registered apprenticeship. And then in years 3 and 4, they would then move into the K-12 teacher registered apprenticeship. In Tennessee, it was just all one giant K-12 teacher apprenticeship. So we, like Austin P actually with Clarksville, condensed it to a 3 year model. So they first went to a community college and then went over to Austin P, and all 3 years they were already working as a paraprofessional. The reason I'm bringing this up is this, I do feel more confident in than the teacher leader one. Quite a few states, there are states that do have a teacher aide or a paraprofessional license, but it is less than 30% of states have that. So that's not there's no type of paraprofessional or teacher aide license in Michigan. There's no type of license like that in Tennessee, for example. But certain states have certain, like, there was a state that I remember their apprenticeships, they didn't want longer than 2 years. So you could tap into one source of funding if you called it a teacher aide, and then a separate funding all for the same candidate. When it comes to what I would say based on our work is that the reason we built the K-12 principal registered apprenticeship is because why does anyone leave any job? They leave because of who you work for. And so we realized with all this work we were doing on developing new teachers via registered apprenticeships, it's not going to be great if they leave because their boss is a jerk. So by investing, I think it was Superintendent Baszler who said, we don't have a principal shortage in North Dakota, but we have a principal quality issue. So how could we do better on the preparation of the quality of new principals moving forward? So with that said, I actually think, I want to be clear, I'm going to make a statement that just says simply, like, I don't believe we pay teachers enough. You shouldn't have to become a principal to make a living wage as someone who works in education. But at the same time, like, you should be able to teach for 30 years and retire and, live comfortably. With that said, I think that's where the lead teacher could be really interesting. So to the question, in some states where maybe they do have a paraprofessional license, yeah, you could do a stackable teacher aide to K-12 teacher, eventually to lead teacher, and then eventually, if they so choose, to the principal. No different than as you're designing the original teacher apprenticeship, there should be multiple entryways. You should be able to enter with, a GED or high school diploma. You should be able to enter with 0 to 60 credit hours. You should be able to enter with an associate's, a bachelor's, even a master's. So I love that idea and I think we'll hopefully see more stackable options as we move forward, as more occupations get approved and as we see more folks be creative in this space. I got a question about folks in DC and appointees. Again, folks that have lived this work, obviously, as they officially get confirmed, and the administration sets its direction for apprenticeships, both at Department of Ed and Department of Labor. And to be clear, registered apprenticeships are of the Department of Labor. But I do think this is a Secretary of Education nominee who has been very clear about her support for apprenticeships. And then a lot of her team, as I mentioned, 4 different people we've worked with who all created teacher apprenticeship, registered apprenticeships. And so, including one who created the principal registered apprenticeship. So we're very cautiously optimistic. And then same on the labor side, a client of ours did that. So I just want to reiterate, it's going to take some time, but we're excited about who they're bringing on board because it's actual practitioners that have been members of our state network. So it's pretty cool to see in that regard. I'll do one last call for any other questions that folks may have. Um, all right, I just got one. How many states are doing principal registered apprenticeships? Uh, our latest count is just over 10 states. And I'm not saying that's from the US Department of Labor, but we are aware ourselves of 10, at least 10 states who have done a principal registered apprenticeship. So that's pretty exciting to see thus far. I see a shout out in the questions to our friends at Dallas College. Dallas College doing incredible work. The second K-12 teacher apprenticeship in the nation and the first community college. Super cool work. They're a community college that can issue bachelor's degrees. So it's really cool. Our friend Sarah Delano and Rob DeHaas over there, just great folks. All right. Well, Ben, do you mind pulling up the slide with our contact information one more time, just so folks have it? If anybody ever has any questions, or your state or a district or an entity looking for any type of support, please feel free to message us. Check out our resources. If you're a state or district that's not in our networks, I want to be clear, it fits into your budget because it's free and it's always been free. So free 99, if it's free, it's for me. That's the way I've always operated. We'll have more webinars coming up, but yeah, we're just appreciate everyone's work. Please continue to focus up on the quality. It shows why we're horrible business people, because if we just wanted to, well, first off, if I wanted to make money, I wouldn't have formed a nonprofit. But the growth, we could have kept hitting the gas pedal on growth, and we have turned down work. We have pushed people, even friends of ours, to say, come on, we got to do better. And so I want to be clear, it's all about just how do we do one thing better tomorrow and the next day and the next day. It's all about continuous improvement. We're learning every day. You just saw me learn about Illinois having teacher leadership endorsements. And so we thank you all for your work, your commitment. And please reach out if we can ever be of help. My team is 10 times smarter than me. They'll know the answers that I do not know. Y'all take care. Have a good day now. Bye-bye.